several times a day as you travel through Ghana. It's one that will ring in your ears at night and bring a smile to your face for weeks after you leave. Ghana is known as the friendliest country in Africa, and Akwaba means welcome, and you will be. And I hope that today at WordCamp, you felt part of it? Yeah. So what I've learned is that I was talking to Vince. Is Vince still here? Yes? So at lunch, Vince was saying one thing that he hadn't realized about the WordPress community, and I think is part of its success, is that it's not just a development community. And it takes a while for people to figure that out. There are designers, there's user accessibility experts, there's writers, there are end users, there's enthusiasts. And this diverse input is what makes this whole project strong and a success. Oh, we're not going to go to that slide yet. I have to lead into that one. So, I don't have speaker's notes. But what that means for you is that there's room for you. And if you didn't know that there was room for you, all this diversity means that you have a space in this community. And there are many people who come to WordPress with no marketable skills. How many of you started with WordPress with no coding background or very few skills to start with? There's a lot of people who start at the beginning. And you can dabble, you can grow, you can learn. And it's not like some other software company like Google or Facebook who's going to want a resume of relevant work experience and you have to have a computer science degree. You can just get started with WordPress wherever you are. And that leads to the next slide, which is, I kind of think about WordPress like the bad news bears of software. That we're just kind of a ragtag, disheveled group of misfits with questionable talent who somehow find success in our shared passion for open source code. But what is WordPress? When I was talking to Vince also today, people think about WordPress just as the core software. But it's also WordPress.org. How many of you have been to the WordPress.org website? Yes, just about everyone. So WordPress.org is separate from a software. It's a totally separate project, also run by volunteers, where you find the support forums and the plugins directory and the theme repository. And then there's the WordPress Foundation, and the WordPress Foundation holds the trademark for WordPress. And the WordPress Foundation is what supports this event from happening today, as well as our Boulder WordPress meetup and the Denver WordPress meetup are all sponsored by the WordPress Foundation. And then there's Automatic, which is a for-profit company that holds a commercial license to WordPress for the purpose of having WordPress.com. Have any of you had sites on WordPress.com? Yep. Yeah. So when we talk about WordPress, we're talking about all of these things, and they're all very distinct and different, but they all provide different opportunities for you to engage. But who makes WordPress? Not these guys. But it's a group of volunteers, and it's people from all over the world who collaborate to create the core software, to write documentation, to provide support, to translate WordPress, and to organize events. And it couldn't happen without all of your input into the project. And with all these people coming from different backgrounds, we each have a unique perspective and a story to share that impacts the project. So I'm going to tell you about my story, which is that I didn't always use WordPress. There was a time when now I freelance and I lead meetup groups and I teach classes, but there was a time that I had a real job. I had an employer, I had benefits, I had 401k, I had dental insurance. Do you remember dental insurance? It was a real thing. And I thought by my early 30s I had a career track. I was going somewhere. I had a path that I could follow. But then the dot-com crash happened, and I got laid off. And every place I would have applied for a job was no longer hiring, or they were on hiring freezes or laying off themselves. Has anyone else been through the dot-com crash? That was fun, good times. Yeah. It was hard, it was dismal. And, but you know, when bad things happen, you never know what possibilities are in that. In the moment, it feels bad. But you don't know what things can happen to change your life. And what you won't know until you get to that future point, what things led you there. So in these moments when we're relating with each other, we have the possibility to impact each other in ways, and we don't know how those impacts are going to affect us till we're down the road. So for me, my impact came from this woman named Melinda. I traced back, like where I am today, to how I got here, and I had to go back 18 years, step by step, to find that one moment that set me on that divergent path. And Melinda, this was 3 years before WordPress was even a thing. Melinda was this beautiful elderly woman. She had sparkling blue eyes, and she dressed all in lavender. And she had this hope that if we could all share our personal stories, that we could solve the problems that we face as humanity. That somehow, in our shared narrative, we could transform and handle really difficult things. When I first met Melinda, she shared a little bit about her life, and she said, I've lived my life in thirds. When I was 33, I got married. When I was 66, my husband died. And she said, you know, in this last third of my life, I want to make a difference. And to that end, she was compiling the book of all her writings because she believed so much in this storytelling. And the reason I was meeting Melinda, Supergirl, was because all of her files for this manuscript she had been working on for a really long time were gone. And she just couldn't open them. And so a mutual friend of ours called me and said, you know, could you help this woman? And I'm like, sure, I'll try. And I went to her house and I recovered the files in just plain text documents and was able to restore them. And her assistant and a helper to publish this book was watching me very intently. She's like, seeing this command line foo I have, and she's like, we could use someone like you at the nonprofit I work for. Do you know anything about databases? And I did. I had done a lot of database work in the past. And she said, could you volunteer? And I'm like, sure, I have nothing else to do right now. So in addition to taking long walks with my dog and sending my resumes into a black hole, I started arriving every Friday morning at the Boulder County Arts Alliance and working on their membership database. And what was amazing about that is I started to feel happy. I started to feel a part of something. I started to feel like I was a part of something greater in our community. And even though my job prospects still felt as dismal as before, I felt more optimistic that things could change. And in working with the Arts Alliance, I got to meet amazing people. And after a few months, they hired me. They hired me to be their communications director. And it was a part-time job, and I was kind of ambivalent about taking it. It was like, well, you know, it's not full-time, it doesn't have the benefits, but I'll just do this as a stopgap. And the people I met there and the things that I learned took me so many directions. And one of them was to go to Ghana, because an artist had come in and said he wanted to start a West African dance and drumming festival, and he needed help with publicity. And after a few years of volunteering with his festival, he invited me to go to Ghana. And then I also, the organization needed a website. So I didn't know how to build websites, but I launched Microsoft Front Page. And this was like 2001. Microsoft Front Page users, yes, we need to drink together. That's right. So, but I learned a lot. It was like edifying. I built all these websites then for artists and other arts organizations. Because at that time, people realized they didn't want brochures anymore, they wanted websites, right? And after a while of working with Front Page and these painful HTML table-based sites, I realized I needed to learn CSS. So I took a class in CSS, and it wasn't until the very end of the class that the teacher said, this is really great that you learned CSS, but he wanted to give us another acronym to use, which was CMS, Content Management System. And he proceeded to tell us about WordPress. And I thought, that's cool. Like, you don't have to adjust people's commas and apostrophes anymore. They have an interface, and they can go do this. And the content's in the database, and there's these files that show the site, and it just seems so organized and right. And after class, I went home, and I went to WordPress.org and pulled up the famous 5-minute install. Who's done the famous 5-minute install? How many minutes does it really take to do the famous 5-minute install?
Hours.
Okay. No, like your first time. Okay. Yeah, so at about midnight, I was looking at my first WordPress dashboard. And it was WordPress 2.2. You guys think you have it hard now. Okay, 2.2 or further back? 0.7. Yay! We've got staying power, commitment. And I was so excited. Like to me, this was super cool. It doesn't look as cool now, does it? So I started building WordPress sites. And this year, 2.2 was in 2007, and it happened to be a big year for WordPress. And I don't know how many of you know this, but Matt Mullenweg was named number 16 the most important people on the web for his angel investing, for working on WordPress, and for participating and contributing to freedom of speech. And that is part of the mission of WordPress, is to democratize publishing across the web. WordPress won the PACT Best Open Source Software, CMS Software Awards. That was the year that the WordPress plugin directory became really official and the place to go. And the themes directory didn't come for another year. And I think just the year before, the WordPress logo was trademarked. Everything was kind of new and exciting and happening, including widgets. That was a new thing. That was super cool. So I was learning about the Big Bad Loop. Who took the Big Bad Loop session today? It's not as bad as you think it is. Yeah. So you learn that. Conditional tags, the template hierarchy. And I was doing this all by myself. And I really wanted to kind of break out of the default theme Kubrick. This is what websites look like. And I was working with a designer, and he didn't know that we were supposed to have this header and sidebar and content area. So he gave me this design. Boop. And this was 2008, and this is a TV, and there are videos that play kind of in the TV. And it actually won a local Abby Award, and I thought that was really cool. So I was excited to think about outside the box. This may not look as cool now, but it looked really cool then, right, Bethany? It was amazing. But I was alone. I was working out of my house and in my home office, and didn't know anyone else using WordPress besides my instructor. And I really had a hard time networking. I was really shy. And, I was like, hi, my name's Angela Bowman, and I use WordPress. Nanu. And people are like, what's WordPress? You never mind the nanny part. But I went to, and then I wore my clothes backwards. But I went to this meetup group of all women graphic designers. And this meetup group, I feel like, pivoted my life. Because when you go from being a solopreneur, and then you have partners and people who are supporting you and helping to teach you, your possibilities grow so much more. And at that meetup, I met Bethany Siegler. Everyone clap for Bethany. She does such amazing. She was presenting. Did you present last year? You presented a lot of WordCamps.
Yeah.
So Bethany's my partner in crime. And so when I introduced myself, you know, Nanu, Bethany was like, yeah, Nanu, I use WordPress too. And it was so exciting to meet someone else who used WordPress back then. And it's like, we need to talk. And we had lunch. And lunch bled into a late afternoon. And then we're ordering pizza. And then we're spending weekends like updating clients' sites and talking about, well, how do you do billing? And how much do you charge? And should you add categories to the menu? That was a controversial thing. Like, the menu just for pages and a category should be a widget. And we commiserated over things like my first business card, which I was really proud of. It had a lowercase p, and then I suddenly wasn't so proud. It was like, oh, you're not supposed to do that. And like, who knew? You know, who knew this was such a big deal? Or, you know, we would be like, oh, I left that do not let search engines, you know, search engines. We've all done it. And you learn. We also commiserated over the fact when we figured out that we actually had to update client sites. Back in the early days, there weren't quite so many updates, and we thought we could just build these sites and, you know, say, okay, nice working with you, bye. And when we found out that for security purposes and functionality, we actually needed to maintain the sites, it was like, seriously? I have to go back to that client and interact with them and get them to pay me more money? But we worked it out, and we were so elated when that update button got added to the plugins list. Does anyone have that similar sense of like, oh, thank goodness that happened? So Bethany and I had our kind of like little private community, and we thought, we've learned a lot together. Wouldn't it be great if we could share this knowledge with other people, so they wouldn't have to go through quite as much pain as we went through? So we started teaching classes along with Doug Ray, my original CSS instructor, and we discovered that we had a little bit bigger of a community of people. And then in 2010, there's Doug Ray in the corner there, I can't believe I found this photo. We went to our first WordCamp. And that was the first time that I realized that WordPress is bigger on the inside. I was so impressed. I had no idea there were all these other people. We filled the Boulder Theater. And there were amazing speakers. Jane Wells, there was Lisa Sabin-Wilson, and I'm watching these people. And Bethany had wanted me to do a talk with her, and I refused. I felt like way too shy to do that. And I'm watching these other people, and I'm like, yeah, there's no way I'm doing a keynote ever in my life. And I just kind of figured they ran out of speakers. That's why I'm here. But I also learned that WordPress community is not just about free t-shirts. It's also about stickers and buttons and socks and stuffed animals and blankies. You guys got your blankie, right? So as I was teaching these classes over a number of years, there was this common theme. If people are coming to WordPress, they're full of hope. It's amazing the hope that people put into WordPress. Whether they have a business and they're going to use WordPress to launch their business site, or they want to create a freelance career, they want to get out of a job they hate. WordPress represents independence and freedom, and it also feels very accessible, like you could actually do that with WordPress. And, you know, it was interesting to see that people were so much like me. People were in life transition. People are coming to these classes and these, with this certain challenge in their life. People in midlife, 40s, 50s, 60s. I taught a class at Anderson Ranch to a group of 60 to 80-year-olds to build their arts portfolios in WordPress. And as I'm working with students, I'm realizing that they feel uniquely challenged in whatever they're deficit in. Like if you're a designer, you may not feel like you're a good coder, and if you're a coder, you may not be confident in your design. And one day I'm looking out at this group, like we have 9 people here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm just gonna pick on this row. They may be really friendly. You're all very friendly. But I'd be like, oh, here's someone who's a really good designer. And here's a woman who's a great marketing person, and someone who's a really good coder, and someone who's good at writing, and someone who's good with seeing the big picture, and someone who's good with IT. And I said to them, I said, you know, you guys right here in this class shouldn't feel insecure, because as a whole, you're an ad hoc agency. So I started to lead meetups so they could meet each other. That after the class, they could come together. Oh, hey, some of you were in this picture. But what we found when we met, because I kind of kept it as a private meetup, that people had a sense of security and safety with each other, that they could really share with each other what it is that they were needing, what challenges they were facing, and that people started to partner together. So we actually had people launch freelance businesses because they could team up with other people who had different skill sets than theirs. And so we had this super-powered marketing woman who teamed up with someone who just was interested in building the sites. And we have a lot of people who like to build sites, but they don't want to maintain them. So one of our team members now is maintaining a lot of other people's websites. And we had, you know, people who are really good with design, partnering with the coders, but because they've studied some coding, they understand the challenges. So it's just been really fun and really energetic and really exciting. And another interesting thing that I learned from these groups is that we could learn from each other's mistakes. We could maybe not repeat the same mistakes, but we could also exchange tips of the trade, and then somehow with all of us being together, we could learn more than we could ever learn on our own. Another part of learning what you can't learn on your own is seeing other people use your software. And Steph Wells and I were talking about this in the hallway. One really fun thing about being out there is I was teaching these classes on image galleries. And the owner of Imagely, which makes Next Gen Gallery, he would come and sit in on my classes. And his wife would bake chocolate chip cookies for our entire class. And he would hand out premium licenses. And he would just take notes. Like he could have, some things that were not obvious to him as to how end users were working with Next Gen Gallery began to pop up. And he would almost help co-teach the class with me. He would provide input as to why some things were the way they were. And for us, we became his best focus group. For him, we became his best focus group. And for us, it helped us feel like a part of the development of the plugin. There's like more buy-in. And we felt like, oh, we can trust, there's more trust here now because someone really cares. So I'd say, how many plugin developers are there in the room right now? How many of you guys build plugins? Yeah, get with the people. You know, the meetups aren't just for end users. If you can go be in a meetup and, you know, go to a class and see how people are using your software and get their input, it's invaluable. You think you know everything about your own plugin because you wrote it? You don't. You don't know what people are really doing out there. So finding your tribe. This is a huge deal. Because it's hard to meet people, right? Did you all meet people today?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So one hard thing about meeting people is everyone's like, so what do you do? What do you do? And I was at a conference in 2012. It was one of my first big tech conferences besides WordCamp. And everyone that I met, I would introduce myself. You know, hi, I'm Angela, I use WordPress. I didn't do that anymore. But they were like, oh, well, I'm a social media expert, UI, UX, blogger, podcaster, la la la. Every person had the same title. What they did is they just changed the words around. And by the end of this conference, I was so like not really feeling connected to people. I didn't feel like I was quite as expert as they were in all of their things, and I also didn't really feel like I knew anyone. So after a number of lucky sevens at the after party, I started to go up to people and I thought, you know, I'm going to do something different. I'm throwing out the rules here. We're not going to do this what do you do thing anymore, because I already know what they do. I can tell them what they do after being here all week. So I went up to this man and I said, hi, my name's Angela Bowman. Tell me something about yourself that has nothing to do with technology. You need to tell me. Right now. He likes to play ice hockey. How many other people here play ice hockey? Okay, you too. After party conversation. Okay, what about you? Tell me something about yourself that has nothing to do with technology. You made that skirt. I really want to learn how to make clothes. Oh, that is so cool. Who else makes clothes or does fiber arts? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. So I go up to this guy, ask him this question, and I'm shaking his hand, and he kind of pulls back. He narrows his eyes. And I thought, ooh, I think I've broken a rule. And he goes, Palminko. And I'm like, okay. And he kind of grabs me around the waist and takes my other hand and proceeds to teach me how to Palminko dance. I'm like, well, that's memorable. That's much less boring than social media expert. And so I tried it again with someone else. And so, tell me something about yourself that has nothing to do with technology.
I love gardening.
Gardening. Any other gardening enthusiasts? Wow, you have 20 new friends. Yeah. So the next guy, I do the same thing, and he says, two-step. So then he proceeds to, I'm more of a salsa person, but anyway. So he starts spinning me around, and I'm just trying not to step on his toes. But I thought this is something, because what I feel like we need to be doing with each other is building relationships on common interests. And when we think about networking, we're often thinking about, well, I need to explain what I do, and that's the only way business is going to happen. But if you can find common interests with other people, the professional part will come later. And even though Bethany and I were like, what do you do? WordPress. our friendship and our being colleagues, and Eliana, has really largely depended on the fact that we do have a lot of things in common. So find things in common with people. I challenge you at the after party tonight to ask people, like, what's their favorite podcast? What books have they read lately that are interesting? What did they think of Black Panther? There's just so many opportunities to get to know each other outside of work, and let the work stuff build for itself. But the other thing you need to do is think about when we're meeting people and doing this networking, and we're thinking about what can you give me? And instead we need to think about what can I offer to you? And if you have a product to sell, don't try to sell your product. Try to build that common interest. I had someone write to me on Facebook through the Advanced WordPress group on Facebook, and he was trying to sell me his stuff. He's like, oh yeah, so we do cloud computing and multi-site and blah, 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 blah. And that wasn't really connecting with me. But someone else wrote to me through my website and said, hey, I read your blog post. It's really good, but you have some broken links. And I'm like, thank you. I will remember you because you helped me. And so think about ways that you can help other people, not necessarily sell yourself. And when you're getting started with WordPress, it can seem daunting. You know, you want someone to hire you to build their website. But you got to get that out of your head. You got to look at the way that you can start contributing and participating in this community or in some other community where you might have your job prospects. One thing that was mentioned earlier today is this site called Make.wordpress.org. I've heard of this site for years, and everyone's like, oh, you need to get involved with Make.wordpress.org. Like, okay, that doesn't mean anything to me. But in 2015, I went to WordCamp USA, and they had a contributor day. Who's been to contributor day here? Few people. Tell me, what's contributor day like? Like, what did you get out of contributor day? And how did it make you feel? Yeah. And did you feel like you were just like part of making WordPress happen? Yeah. Like, oh, that's the secret? So Make.wordpress.org is kind of the secret of what people don't know, is that it isn't the Oompa Loompas who make WordPress. It's a lot of individuals who volunteer their time, whose companies volunteer their time to make WordPress happen. And you don't have to have any technical skill. So if you go to make.wordpress.org, there's a grid of all these different teams you can get involved with. And I recommend you don't have to really join a team, but you can put your toe in. And if you go to a WordCamp and you hear about Contributor Day, just go. You don't, no expectations, just arrive and they'll give you lunch. Okay, so just show up. They'll suck you in. It's like the mafia. They may not let you go. But another way you can contribute and be a part is who uses plugins. We all use plugins. So you get your WordPress.org username and just start starring those and write some reviews, and that's a way you can be a part of the community. And go to meetups, organize a meetup. And I want to say, how many meetup organizers do we have here today? Okay, did you get that email that talked about the speaker training this week? That there's all this documentation now that we can train our people in our meetup how to do presentations. And so I encourage the meetup organizers to lead a meetup where you're training people how to do presentations, and to get some of these people who might be shy, who have never presented before, get them to present and encourage people to present. Because there's a lot of people out there who have a lot of knowledge. We need sometimes more women to present. And so by training people and giving them kind of an outline of how they can do a presentation, that participation increases tremendously. And as a meetup organizer, you don't want to have to be the one leading all the meetups, right? It'd be nice for other people to do it. Make introductions for people, volunteer, blog, podcast. These are things that you can do to get involved. And if you need any more ideas, talk to me at the after party, and I will give you a list of 100 things to do that can and help you brainstorm some ways you can get involved. So then, I want to tell you a story about Kevin. Who knows Kevin Hoffman? A few people know Kevin Hoffman. So Kevin shared this story with me. I was on the Advanced WordPress group on Facebook, and if you don't know about that group, you don't have to be advanced to spy. They just check the questions to make sure they're of a certain advancedness to make it worthwhile for everyone. But so Kevin was commenting on a post about image source set. Image source set is this way that WordPress has of showing different sized images on different devices. It's simple, but it's really confusing at the same time. And for this developers meetup I'm running, I wanted someone to speak about it. And I saw that Kevin was very articulate. And I said, I wrote to Kevin privately and asked him if he would remotely participate in speaking at our developers meetup about this. And he agreed. And I didn't know that he had never done a presentation before, ever. And so we did a screen share and recorded it on Blab, may it rest in peace. And he did an amazing job. He had these very organized slides, he was very articulate, and I was profusely thankful that he was willing to do this for us. And at the same time that this happened, Kevin came across a talk on WordCamps by Bridget Willard. And Kevin had been working at home alone for 8 years and had never been to a WordPress meetup and never been to a WordCamp. So after this experience with our group, which was a positive experience, he thought, well, maybe I should go check out my local Pittsburgh meetup group. And at that meetup, they were recruiting people for WordCamp Pittsburgh, and the women there encouraged him to submit his talk that he did for our meetup to WordCamp Pittsburgh. And he did. And this talk, I'm going to read this quote. He says, "Getting involved with WordCamp Pittsburgh changed my career and ultimately my life. The connections I made transformed me from an independent developer constantly worrying about where the next job was coming from to a member of a team at the forefront of WordPress." So he got a job as an engineer at WordPress, the makers of Give WP plugin and many other plugins. And he is so happy, and you will find him on Twitter, and he is contributing. And I think he just can't be thankful enough that he got involved with the community after so many years and had no idea these opportunities could exist for him. Since WordPress was announced in 2003, it's fostered that sense of community, of belonging, of being part of something greater. And what I really wanted to do here for you today is say that you do have a place in here. And did I go out? Yes. You ran out of battery power. The whole AV. I'm going to talk really loud.
Project your voice to the back of the room.
Hey, can you hear me back there? All right. So, my most poignant part of my talk. That you just never know what impact you're going to have on other people. Pay attention to these moments and your connections. Build your relationships. If you met someone today, even if it was a speaker, get their social media handle,
Follow them. Don't stalk them. Follow them. Comment. Start building that community for yourself. Because we have the possibility you could change someone else's life and you don't know that. And they could change your life and you don't know. So pay attention. And, gosh, I'm seriously going to forget my last very poignant line. I'm going through my slides really fast here. Okay, here it is. Here it is. Oh no, that's not it. This is it. Oh, yes. So, what I was going to say is for me, it was helping this elderly woman who had a life story, a life passion to share her story. That simple act set me on a path I couldn't predict. And doing a talk somewhere could set you on a path. And you may not all become stars overnight, but you will feel happier by being more involved. So thank you, Akwaba, and have a great evening.